Many people ask the question, why are the Amish called Pennsylvania Deutsch or Pennsylvania Dutch? Many of you have probably visited Amish communities. We have a lot of tourist areas like Lancaster and different huge communities across the country. And a lot of times when you go there, that's what people want to do. They want to go to that restaurant where they have that Pennsylvania Dutch cooking. Where did the term come from? Are the Amish German? Are they speaking German? Where does it come from? And that's what we're going to explore in this video. Now we have to go all the way back to the 1500s when the Amish actually didn't exist yet. I do have a video where I talk about the origins of the Amish, and you're welcome to watch that. There's a link above because I'm not going to go into too much detail here. But I do have a chart that shows the Protestant Reformation. Many of you are familiar with Martin Luther, and he was a bishop with the Catholic Church, as there were many others that decided that they didn't agree with some of the rules and the legalities of the Catholic Church, so they split away. Now, as you can see in this chart, many different denominations split away. So all these denominations that split away, they didn't all agree on everything either. And so there we have our Swiss brethren, our Mennonites that split in Switzerland during the Reformation. They were headed up by different leaders. And then later, it wasn't until the 1600s that the Amish broke away from the Mennonites. So basically, your brethren, your Mennonite, and your Amish are very, very similar in many of their beliefs and why they split, but then they kind of split from each other again over different legalities. And again, that's a whole nother video. What is important here is that because of this, lots of persecution was going on. Your Catholic leaders were losing a lot of power. In Germany, especially, and all of Europe, many of your Catholic leaders were in charge, and they set the rules for the people. It was their way of controlling the people. We kind of have that a lot in history. You have people that get into power, they want to control the people, and they were doing it through the church at this time. Because of the persecutions taking place, many of your Amish migrated into southern Germany. And you can see here on the map that they migrated into the southern part. Now, of course, still have problems. Persecution still going on. There's still no freedom of religion. So that is when we get to the point where a lot of your Germans were migrating to the United States. And I have another video there where it talks about the migration of the first Amish settlement that came to America. When they came to America, they actually migrated with Germans. And they came as a group of people, and they migrated to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was one of the freest religious colonies at that time. William Penn was really trying to make his colony a place where people could choose freely how they wanted to worship. It's interesting, and I mentioned this in my video that I just shared, but it was very interesting that even though people were fleeing to the colonies and to the Americas for freedom of religion, all of a sudden they would set up these colonies that each had certain religious faiths, and then they made it the religion of their colony. So they basically turned around and did the same thing all over again. Crazy. But so in Pennsylvania, William Penn really tried to make it a free place for people to come. And that is where a lot of your Germans fled to. It's interesting. Now, I do have a map here that shows what Germany looked like back in the 1700s. And down here in the southern part of Germany is where your Amish were migrating into Germany in the southern part of the country. This is what Germany looks like today. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how the dynamics of the country have changed in a couple hundred years. Large numbers of Germans were coming into the Americas. And like I said, the Amish were part of that group because they were from Germany. They were migrating together. And in the colonies, they started calling them Pennsylvania Deutsch because they were German.
Deutsche. Pretty straightforward. Deutsche.
And the Amish, kind of being within that group, even though they had different religious beliefs, had that title stuck to them. Now, the German population tried really hard to get rid of that title. Many people migrating into the Americas wanted to be part of America. They wanted to get rid of the roots, if per se, and they tried to get rid of any kind of distinction like that. They wanted to be, quote, American. They don't want to be German Americans. They wanted to be Americans. So they worked really hard at dropping this, while the Amish community kind of got stuck with it, and it kind of stuck with them. It's interesting that by 1790, as many as 100,000 Germans had already immigrated into America, with a lot of them being the Amish. 8% of the population in the United States at that time were German. 33% in Pennsylvania were German. So that was definitely a huge immigration population coming from Germany. Now, as I'm saying this, you're probably wondering, well, why are we calling them Pennsylvania Deutsch or Dutch when they're coming from Germany? Germany was not a country called Germany as such back then. They were considered Dutch, and that's where it comes from. So any Germanic languages back then were called Dutch or Deutsch from the English. So that's where that comes from. Many of your Amish and Mennonite communities still use that German language. Many of them speak German and English together, but a lot of times you may be around an Amish group and you can hear them speaking that other language, and they definitely teach that to their children. And many children don't learn English until they go to school. It just really depends on the different sects.